Hello there. So, what I thought I'd talk about today is the difference between information, knowledge, and understanding. I think this is important, and so listen to the end because everyone's misusing these terms all the time and creating a lot of confusion in the world. So, buckle up. I'm going to do my best. So, what do we mean when we're talking about information? Well, it's kind of right there in the parts of the word. You're putting things in a formation. Basically, those things could be thought of as data, right? Information is usually the point where we talk about that minimum set. So we're not going to talk about signals, right, which I'm rather fond of pointing out exist. We're going to talk about, okay, we've gotten these signals, we've formed them into something, and now they're coming into us. The problem with information is it could be incorrect. It could be wrong somehow, right? It could be false. And so information doesn't necessarily solve a problem because if it's false, it's leading you astray. And how do you know if it's false? Well, now we've got an issue. There's a lot of people treat information as if more information is better. And of course, I have a video on that here that you can watch. That's not good. So this is why we need evidence. Is this information correct? So what's the difference between mere information and evidence? Well, evidence contains relationships, right? Evidence points to relationships and contains relationships. So it's not enough to say something like Joe said he saw this person draw a gun, right? Or Sally heard somebody fire a gun. These things are information. They're not actually evidence. Now, if you take Joe's sight and Sally's hearing together, and you can verify the timestamp that these things occurred, then the odds that there was a gun go way up. See, that's evidence. It's not evidence when it's in pieces. It's evidence due to its relationship. So maybe that information about a gun is correct after all. But saying somebody has a gun, that could be anything. And so we need to kind of realize the difference. Information alone is just an insufficient thing. It's not all that helpful. And a lot of information exists, but isn't relevant. It isn't important. The sky is blue. Okay, I agree. I don't know why that's interesting or important or why I need to know that. If you go to court, a lot of times they'll just overwhelm you with information to try and confuse you. And that's a common tactic. Overwhelming people with information, saying things really, really fast so you can't catch up. That's part of cognitive overload. Knowledge is a bit different. Everyone throws around the word knowledge and nobody bothers to define it. And I think I know why. Because they can't. Because they suck. That's all. It's not hard. Knowledge is something that you have integrated into your ability to interact with the world. You only get knowledge through participation. You can get information any number of ways, right? But knowledge only happens when you participate with something, and no, reading is not participation. Sorry. You can argue it's, quote, a form of participation with the author. The author's not there, though, so no, it's not. You could argue it's a participation with a book because you're turning pages and actually looking. No, these are just thoughts you're having. Sorry. Doesn't rise to the level. There's a big difference between reading about how to ride a bike and actually riding a bike. See, one conveys knowledge, the other one does not. Now, will reading about how to ride a bike help you ride a bike? Maybe, maybe not. This is no more clear than in the story Flowers for Algernon, where it's not even about reading about something, it's about showing somebody something. And then being unable to interpret because two different people are showing the same thing happening a different way, right? Using a different method, we'll say, that's confusing to people, or some people, at least the main character of the book. No knowledge was conveyed even from watching them do something, the same thing, at the same time. Because knowledge is only conveyed through participation, direct participation. You only know how to ride a bike by trying to ride a bike and succeeding. And it's the success that's the marker for knowledge, not the ingestion of the information. That's why I'm talking about information versus knowledge. You can ingest information and get nothing out of it, even if it's correct and true. Even if you have evidence to back up that information, it can have no effect whatsoever on you. I've seen this many times. It happens all the time. You'd be surprised. You tell people something, you give them the evidence for it, doesn't change their thinking one little bit. Extremely common. Why? Because they didn't participate, and therefore they didn't gain any knowledge. It's that simple. This isn't that hard. And you might say, well, Mark, what about understanding? Well, understanding is a lot harder to deal with, I will admit. But understanding basically means in the midst of something, among it, comprehending. And I think this is a really important difference too. So we're on the other side of knowledge, right? We're actually on the other side of knowledge, where we have something closer to a knowledge that is useful and true to something else, right? So it's easy to say, well, look, I have a knowledge of programming. I have a knowledge of writing algorithms, for example. I've written many algorithms because I've participated with algorithms. I've built them. I've tested them. I've deployed them, right? I've done all of that. I've designed them from scratch. Not that hard for me, thankfully, right? So you could say I have like some kind of knowledge of algorithms. But the understanding of algorithms is a totally different thing. So if you don't understand algorithms well enough, you might be fooled into thinking, for example, well, because I have knowledge of algorithms, if Twitter gives me access to their algorithm, I'll be able to do something with it. That is false. See, I know I don't comprehend Twitter well enough, especially because algorithms are entirely dependent upon data. I don't comprehend what their data flow looks like, what they're trying to accomplish with Twitter. Even if I have their algorithm, even if I'm knowledgeable about algorithms and I have knowledge of algorithms in general, I don't have the understanding of Twitter to leverage their algorithm for anything, including building another Twitter for that matter. I might be able to use that algorithm and build a competitor to Twitter, but I might not, because they don't have the level of understanding of what's trying to be accomplished or even what's possible, because my argument would be Twitter can't accomplish its goals either because it doesn't really understand what's happening. It doesn't understand the nature of the system as constrained and as created. And that's a big problem. So this understanding is to be inside of something and comprehending it in a way that matches something, we'll say, outside of everything. Right? Whereas a knowledge, you just have a knowledge of any number of things. You say you have a knowledge of the works of Shakespeare. That's fantastic. Maybe you've participated with writing Shakespeare's works and participated in Shakespearean plays, and you really have a deep appreciation for Shakespeare. But do you understand Hamlet? Right? And if you're not in the midst of the things those characters were in the midst of, maybe you don't understand it. That doesn't mean you can't appreciate it. That doesn't mean you can't be grateful for it. That doesn't mean you can't have a lot of knowledge about it. But maybe you can't actually comprehend it. And a good example of this is death. Until you experience the death of a parent, you don't know what it's like in any reasonable sense. Now, you can know a lot about death. You can even lose, say, your father and understand, the deep depth of losing a parent. But when you lose your mother, you realize you didn't understand what was going to happen to you. You didn't understand, no matter how much death you've dealt with in the past, you didn't understand because that comprehension wasn't there, because you can't see all the connections you have to your parents until they're gone. And that comprehension happens to you as the result of going through the experience. And it's that through the experience and emerging on the other side. So there's a way in which I can inform you on how to ride a bike. Trying to ride a bike gives you more information about how to ride a bike. And when you successfully ride a bike over and over again, you have knowledge of riding the bike. Maybe you don't understand the significance of being able to ride a bike until one day it hits you. You're free and you can go really fast in ways you couldn't before. And then you gain a level of understanding. Is it complete understanding? Probably not. And in the same way that a car represents freedom, at least in North America, Jordan Peterson's excellent point, a bicycle is the precursor to that freedom because it frees you from having to walk. So hopefully you can see that there's a difference, a huge difference. And everything starts with signals, which is a bigger mess. I'll probably do a video on that at some point. There's a difference between information, just stuff that's out there that's completely, we'll say, coherent, although a lot of it isn't, and people still call it information, right? And knowledge, which is where you've participated. Not I read something in a book somewhere, or not I saw a video on something and it made sense to me, right? You've actually participated, right? And then understanding, where you've had a level of comprehension, and maybe there's an infinite number of levels of comprehension and understanding. I don't know. I don't really care. It's not that important, right? That is beyond mere knowledge. Because you've made a connection from the knowledge, your intimate, we'll call it, relationship with the thing that you have knowledge of, and something outside of either you or that thing. That's the understanding, sort of like understanding is where the knowledge fits into the world, right? And knowledge is how you participate with information, and information is really nebulous stuff. It's very tricky. Lots of things are information, and most information is worthless. I would argue no knowledge is worthless. And I would argue that understanding is the most valuable thing of all. And I don't think you can necessarily achieve understanding of a bunch of things. I don't think it's available to everybody. I'm a big believer in hierarchy. And different people are different. Like, I work with lots of people, try to teach them how to program computers, how to be a software engineer at various levels. And man, most people just can't do it. And that's too bad. But also, that's the world, right? Most people will never be an author. Most people will never be able to run a business, right? We need to be grateful for the people that can do these things, right? I can't play guitar. I've been trying for most of my life. If I gave up, I'm not going to be able to. Can't play piano either. It just is what it is. We all have our limitations. I'm not going to be a basketball forward. I'm not tall enough. I'm not going to dunk a basketball either. Not tall enough. There's lots of limitations we have. The physical ones are, we'll say, easier to deal with and more obvious. But the ones that aren't physical, those we really struggle with. And part of it is we haven't divided the world up correctly. We don't have proper categories for the world. Information, knowledge, and understanding is one such set of categories. It's really important to understand this. It's really important to know about this. It's really important to have the information that leads you to the realization that mere information, not that valuable, very, very plentiful in the world, and very confusing. And hopefully with that, you can get some discernment between mere information and people who have mere information, and knowledge, people who've participated with or in the thing they're talking about, and understanding, people who understand how that participation affects things outside of, we'll say, the mere participation itself. And that's why I'm always grateful for your time, energy, and attention.